retire out of public office. Voter registration will commence in the next couple of months. INEC says the first quarter of next month. I think that this story of voter turnout that we have in the country today needs to be reversed. In 2019, it was only 34% turnout of voters at elections. In the governorship election, you had only 32%. It is shameful, and I think that we've got an opportunity in 2023 to ensure that the youth turnout for elections should turn out 50 or 70%. And we can do it. The NSAS has shown what is possible, and that should be our goal for 2023.
Very well said, Samson. And something you said there that I'm going to throw to our next panelist is about sort of the capability of whoever is going in there, the competence and all of that. So I'm going to come to you now, and I want to talk about trust. Something that we've seen, especially with the NSAS movement, has been, sort of a belief that, certain celebrities or getting into power doesn't start on the day of election. I don't want to talk strategy now. First of all, is 2023 even possible? Considering that we are just about 3 years or less away from that. And secondly, how do we start going about this specifically? So we're going to talk about forming a party, which we've talked about. Is that a viable option, or are we talking about infiltrating already existing parties? And if we're talking about that, how do you do that without, like we say in Nigeria, spinning your wife?
I know that's a topical discussion now in Nigeria about setting up new parties. And I mentioned earlier that the basis of the party should be ideology and not necessarily age or the youth identity. And let me emphasize again that youth is an identity. It is not an ideology. And so if you want to set up a party, it should be a party that is based and hinged on an ideology. And for me, what I consider what should be your ideology should be, how you use political power, to serve the common good. And that's very, very important, because that is why we're challenging the current political formation. The second point is, those new parties or new formation must uphold the principles of internal democracy. I hope that these parties will not come and charge expensive fees for nomination forms, because it's exploitative and it's just an attempt by the political class to exclude both young men and young women. I hope no party will charge millions of naira for party nomination forms. The second is also in relation to decisions within your party, and also selection of party leaders. Those processes have to be democratic. A situation where a seat in the National Assembly is a reward for loyalty and not based on competence and merit is something that needs to be dislodged. So for those who are advocates and proponents of new parties, please keep this at the back of your mind, that using political power to serve the common good is what Nigeria needs. Secondly, we are just 839 days to the 2023 election. INEC has said that the presidential and the National Assembly elections will hold on the 18th of February 2023. It leaves us with 2 years and about 4 or 5 months to the 2023 election. The campaigns somehow have started, and so if you want to run for office, keep in mind that all politics is local. One thing young people tend to forget is this, that they want to run for office, but they stay in the urban areas thinking that Twitter and Facebook is going to help and bring out the votes on the day of election, or Twitter votes or Facebook or Instagram likes translates to vote. It doesn't translate to vote. All politics is local. Go back to your constituency. Every Nigerian belongs to a constituency. And so go to your community. During holidays, volunteer. Serve your people. Show leadership. There's a 24-year-old in the Kenyan parliament today who ran for office at 23. And he served his community over 5 years before his community came to the point to trust him with that responsibility of representation. So please make yourself popular in your constituency, and then people will vote for you. The third point about strategy is this whole concept of who comes out to vote at elections. And it's important, and that's why, this voter registration process is a critical part of our elections. Now, 51.1% of registered voters are young people. Only 46% of that 51.1% turned out on election. So even if we get more young people into the voters register by the first quarter of next year, we still need a deliberate strategy that will bring those people out on the day of election. And I want to urge those who want to run for office with respect to strategy. There's a Fixed Politics initiative that will be launching a program on how to run for office and build young people's capacity. There's a Youngsters Foundation that runs Young Aspirants Fellowship. The Not Too Young to Run movement and Yaga has the Ready to Run. There are other efforts. Please sign up for these programs and learn, how to run for office. One thing I hear young people tell us all the time is they don't have the resources to run for office. Yes, you're never going to get all the money because these guys have the war chest to buy IMEC officials, to compromise security agencies, to buy the party agents. You may not have that resources. And that is why this lesson that we are learning from volunteerism, how young people volunteered for the NSAS protest, we need to take that lesson into the election. Recruit volunteers. And I think Banky W has a very, very classic example of how volunteers, teamed up to support his campaign. We can learn from Banky's experience and get, citizens at the polling unit on election day to watch your vote. So these guys, these old and expired politicians that we want to retire from public office, don't use their money to buy thugs to steal the votes during the 2023 election. And I said it's possible. Today you have people who are 28, who are 29, at the State House of Assemblies and public offices. So don't think that it is not possible. You don't need to acquire all the money. There are people who will volunteer, who will crowdfund. There's just a lot. But oftentimes, mobilizing resources begins from making yourself popular because all politics is local.
Thank you very much, Samson. There's a question here that popped up from one of our viewers, and I want to throw it to you, FK, because we're talking a lot now about transitioning, and there's a lot of talk about political parties and going into government and all of that. But Chooks Ekwekwo here says, where are we leaving the issue of the NSAS in all of this? Are we losing the fight there to focus on something else? How do we sustain the conversation with NSAS while still talking about moving forward?
We can't leave the conversation. You're still seeing videos of people being harassed on the streets. And, so it's a simple question for me, really. If I was a SARS officer 2 weeks ago, right, before the day before the disbandment, and I'm a SARS officer today, it's a very simple question. Where am I? What am I doing? What has happened to my weapons? What has happened to the power that I have? Where am I being deployed to? What processes have been used to evaluate whether I have been a good egg or I have been a bad egg? It's a simple question of, okay, what is happening to them? The demands are actually very straightforward. I mean, on 5 of 5, you even want them to increase their salaries on top of everything that's happening. And so I don't think the NSAS conversation is going to die. And the way that happens is that people don't let it die. So it's not really a question of are we leaving NSAS. You don't leave it. You know what I mean? Whoever is asking the question, don't leave it. But what is going to happen is we have woken up to the fact that asking for better is not wrong. We have woken up to the fact that actually, when we gather as a block and say, you know what, we're going to start asking relevant questions, people realize that they can do that. And so NSAS was a catalyst to what I think you're going to see happening in a lot of different areas. So, of course, you can't leave what happened with it. NSAS alone, because that is still a problem that we're facing right now. You cannot leave it alone. But what is going to happen is people are also going to take